Okay. This dog this dog is pretty cute. Oh, he's at a vet's office. I hope he's okay. Um, so we're gonna look at some dogs today. I like dogs, um, but really, what we need to discuss and what we are here to kind of learn about is dealing with kind of data fetching and injection in React. And so a question came up to me today that I thought was pretty interesting. We've been working on a project using Gatsby, and Gatsby has like this data flow solution worked out where it's ingesting data through like source plugins and things like that, and putting it into like a GraphQL schema, and then like you query this GraphQL schema, and it just magically comes into components using props because of the way that they're doing their server rendering, which is really interesting, but it is not React. That is all like Gatsby's magical solution to how to server render data from all kinds of different sources. So that is like a neat solution. But the question came up from somebody who's been working on this project, and he's like, how does this even work if I don't have this Gatsby kind of scaffolding around? And that's a really good question, because it's a bit unclear if that's what you've been exposed to. So I want to talk a little bit about that today. What we have on screen essentially is a very basic how to fetch data in a React component. And so we'll walk through exactly what this is doing and kind of how it works. But there are this inevitably leads to more questions, and those are important to address, but they're going to require their own videos. So let's get started essentially from the top. What we have is a couple of bits of state here, right? So we have our state and our update state. So I just put like a generic state and update state function here. We're using the use state hook. If you're unfamiliar with hooks, I have a video about hooks. Check that out. Use state just provides you with a piece of state, whatever that might be, and an updater function. So we could actually just call this our like dog URL, right? Dog URL. And it still works, right? We still get, whoa, those are crazy dogs. That actually kind of frightens me. I'm going to make that go away. Oh, that dog's cute and loves a baby. So in this case, right, we've now named the state properly. Our updater function is maybe not named quite correctly. So we can call it like update dog URL. And, you know, now we're in the clear. Now it's like, okay, all of this makes sense when you kind of read through it. We've got a dog URL. We've got an updater function for the dog URL. Great. Now, what is this part? Well, we don't necessarily want to render an image without the source. We'll just render out a broken image. So one good practice is to kind of handle your request state. And so in this particular instance, we have a state called fetched, and then an updater function for that. And we initially set it to false because the data has not been fetched. I'm going to take a second here to talk about naming conventions for this stuff. I think it's very important. Not cute enough. What even is that? Oh, okay. No, we don't want that. That's way too big of a picture. That's cute. Oh, that's like super sweet. So naming conventions, oh God, he's super cute, are really important in that we don't want to force people to use a bunch of inverted logic. So we don't want something where, you know, we start this off as true and then we have to go like bang fetched over here, because that becomes kind of hard to reason about. So we're just going to like undo both of those and try and keep it really straightforward. And if you follow a naming convention like fetched or has received whatever, or something that's verbose, clear, allows other developers to kind of know what you're thinking in this. It will pay dividends down the road as you're maintaining this code. That's pretty cute. Okay, so we have these bits of state. So we have dog URL, which is nothing currently. Good practice here would be to start this out as an empty string. Like, let's not do a whole lot of discussion on typing in JavaScript, but let's, if we have distinct bits of state that will become a certain thing, let's just call them what they are or make that a little bit clearer here. Then we have this function. It is an async function called go get a dog. And what it does is it goes and gets a dog. This cool little API here will send you a random dog URL or a random image URL for one of these random dog images. And so we're just calling fetch, resolving the JSON, and then pulling message off of that. So this essentially will resolve down to a string that we're using here. Now in useEffect, we have a couple of things going on. So we need to go get a dog. And within that, we need to do a couple of things. We need to update our URL. So that is happening as soon as the dog comes in. And then we also need to update fetching, right? So you can watch that happen live here. So you see initially the application renders without any image. It goes off, makes that fetch. When that resolves, it updates these things. Now, using useEffect in this state, as you've hopefully watched my other hooks video, this is essentially component did mount. So we're no longer using those terms, but essentially this only runs on the initial mount of the component. If you needed to do something where this app was taking some sort of prop, when that prop changed and you used it in go get a dog, right? You could do that here. Now, in this current configuration, we're looking for not a random dog, but prop dog, right? So that's essentially how that would work, where you use the same component. It's able to fetch data based on the condition in which it's rendered. So that can be pretty cool. Let me just make sure that's all correct. Cool. So that's what's happening here. Now, this code doesn't really do anything other than just render kind of what's going on. And this seems right now not a whole lot of fun. Like, I'm over here, I have to refresh if I want a new dog. So let's add a button, right? Type is button. And we're going to give it an on click of a function that will execute our get me another dog function, right? And we're just going to call that button fetch. Now, that's not the greatest because we haven't written that function yet, but we're going to resolve that. So now we have a button that says fetch, which is adorable because we've got dogs here, right? I think it's cute, whatever. Now, really what we want it to do is that, right? That's what we want it to do. It's a little bit unclear kind of what's going on, right? This seems tough. This is where loading states come in, and they're pretty important. So what we're going to do is So we have a bit of inverted logic here, which I've just told you to avoid. But what we're going to do with this is we're going to make it clear that we've clicked this and that it's doing something, right? So we have a little bit more of a signal to the user that that something's happening. We get that a bit of flash here, right? Which is not great. So like this is overall, I would say, a suboptimal experience. But I think you get a bit of how working with outside data, using some hooks and making some calls and then updating that based on some sort of user interaction works. So not the greatest example on earth, but definitely the basics are in place here to get you started on this little adventure. Now, we're going to address some patterns for how to not create a jumbled mess of a component when you're dealing with multiple data sources. And eventually, we'll get into dealing with how data flow should be managed across a larger application. Something like Redux comes to mind, which is super exciting for me. I love Redux. I think it's great, but a lot of people don't. And those are people who like a little bit of magic, and it's understandable. But Redux has no magic. So that means you are setting everything up manually. And they call that boilerplate. I call it code, but you can decide when we cover that, whether you like it or not. But this has been just some basics of kind of fetching data, handling some states, just in React. So thanks for watching.